Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar session. My name is Sandra, and I'm the marketing coordinator at TorontoJobs.ca. And joining me is Marc Belaiche. He is a CPA CA, and he's the president of TorontoJobs.ca. And he will start off with a brief introduction about himself and about the webinar today. And the only thing that I wanted to add just before I pass it on to him is that we will be taking questions at the end of the webinar. So if you have questions that you want to jot down, or you can just put them into the chat, there's a little box at the bottom of the screen that says Q&A. You can post your questions in there, and Marc will do his best at the very end of the presentation to answer them. So I'll stop sharing my screen, Marc, and you can carry on with your presentation. And thank you again for joining us today, everyone.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Sandra, and welcome everybody. Thanks for being on. Perhaps I'm just going to wait another maybe another 30 seconds or so before starting, as I see more people joining on to the webinar here today. Really appreciate you taking the time to be on. I've got half an hour of as many tips as I can pack into half an hour as possible. So I'll just wait another 20 seconds or so as I see more people joining up. And I hope you're having a great day so far, and great that you can take the time to join today. So, okay, so I will begin. So as Sandra mentioned, my name is Marc Belaiche. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. I've been in the recruiting industry for 26 years. I am a CPA CA. I did my articling with KPMG from 88 to 92, went to Prudential Insurance 92 to 95. And then since then, I've been in the recruiting industry since 1995. I also wrote the book called Tales from the Recruiter, a Canadian recruiter's perspective. And you can check that out at talesfromtherecruiter.ca. And I help many CPA firms find staff for their firms over the years. And not just that, we recruit for a number of different positions, but certainly over the last little while, there's been a big need with CPA firms. So if you're just joining, make sure to put any questions that you might have in the Q&A, and I'd be happy to answer them at the end. So today I'm going to cover off a little bit about the current labor market. Just spending a few minutes, I'm going to talk about my best practices for finding staff for CPA firms in 2021, and then wrap up, and we'll take some questions as well. So a little bit about the job numbers in Canada. Not going to spend too much time because I know you want to get to the crux of this webinar, but I always like to start with just kind of what's going on in the job market. I always get that as a question when I'm doing these presentations, and just in general talking to people about job numbers and the labor market. So we basically went from an environment in March and April of 2020, just after the pandemic hit, to one of the highest unemployment rates in Canada at just over 13%. And that was just after, in February, where we had the lowest unemployment rate ever recorded in Canadian history in February of 2020. And that was just over 5%. Now, where we're at, if you roll through the clock real fast forward 18 months later, 19 months later, we are now at an unemployment rate of 6.7%, and that's the lowest rate since the pandemic started. We are basically at the employment levels that we were at before COVID hit, as far as from a jobs numbers perspective. Now, the Statistics Canada and the government will spin it to say, well, all the jobs have come back. Well, the reality is the jobs all haven't come back in the same form as we were before. They count part-time and temporary jobs as if it was full-time jobs. So, and it's not quite there. Now, the number of people working from home, and this is going to be important later on, was 4.2 million in October of this year, 2021, which is slightly below the level recorded in October 2020, but we've also gone from about 40% at the peak of people working from home down to about 25% of Canadians across the country working from home. Now, across Canada, the province with the lowest unemployment rate, interestingly enough, is Manitoba at 5.3%. The province with the highest unemployment rate across Canada is 13.9%, with Newfoundland and Labrador. And Newfoundland and Labrador has had consistently the highest unemployment rate for a province across Canada for many months. Ontario unemployment rate now stands at 7.0%, so still above the national average. Now, across the country, and again, why I'm getting to this will factor in to you later on as far as tips go, The city with the highest unemployment rate across Canada is Windsor, Ontario at 9.2%. And that's the 5th month in a row that they've been at the highest rate for a metropolitan area across Canada. And this is looking at 33 metropolitan areas. The city with the lowest unemployment rate across Canada is, interestingly enough, also possibly Quebec City, Quebec at 3.8%. Now, in terms of larger cities, Vancouver sits at 6.2%, and that is a drop from 6.7% where we were in September, and Toronto at 8.4%, and that's also a drop from 8.9% in September. So some good steady improvements overall. And then south of the border, unemployment rate is calculated a little bit different from where we are, how we calculate it in Canada, but the unemployment rate is 4.6% in the US, and that's down from 4.8%. They added over 500,000 jobs in October, which is quite a bit of an improvement from where they did in September, which was just under 200,000. Now in the US, interestingly, only 11% of people work from home or remotely, and that was down from 13% the prior month. So quite about half of the people work from home in the US compared to Canada. Now, again, if you are just joining, you can feel free to put in some questions in the Q&A, and I will get to them as we go along here. So I'm going to share with you my top 10 tips for best practices for recruiting and hiring for CPA firms in 2021 and really going into 2022. But I want to start with some overall comments about where we are right now. Right now, it's very competitive to find staff for public accounting firms. In fact, in a lot of different sectors, it's challenging to find staff. We are finding, to give you an idea of how different it is, we're getting more people that come on to our webinars about finding staff than we are candidates, job seekers coming on to our webinars for tips on how to find a job. So it's really different from normal, I guess, or whatever normal is right now. But I thought, before the pandemic, things were busy. We're busier right now with orders with especially public accounting firms than we ever have. Really low supply, high demand. And the one major hook that we had as recruiters to get candidates before COVID hit, in terms of finding new jobs, public accounting or otherwise, was finding jobs that are closer to home. And when you have a lot of people working from home, especially in public accounting, where they can work from home, there's less of a hook for them to leave their jobs to go somewhere else. And in addition, paying more dollars doesn't necessarily mean as much as it did before the pandemic, because people are saving more and they can't spend. It's not like they can go on worldwide trips or long trips or whatever because of the fear of travel and so on. So you have to be more creative in recruiting. You have to find different ways of getting a hook. And it really has changed during my career. I remember years ago when I first tried to market to CPA firms or CA firms back at the time to have us help them with staffing, that they would say, no way, we're not paying recruiting fees to find people. We're going to just do it ourselves. And you had the base of people and they moved up. And then it kind of came to a point where it was like, yeah, you know what? We kind of need some help. What are your fees? And we can try to, maybe we should consider it, to the point of now where it's like, yeah, recruiting firms, if you're not using a recruiting firm, if you're a CPA firm and you're not using a recruiting firm, you're probably going to be out of luck, because it is very, very hard to find staff, as you probably have come to realize. So my 10 top 10 tips here. Number one, and I'm going to post them in the chat for those of you watching on Facebook. I will put them into the chat later on, but I am just going to throw them in here if you're watching on our Zoom. Number one is learning to be more adaptable. It's really important for your firm to be adaptable during this crisis. You really have to think about your business model. Firms are now accommodating and adapting towards the employee in how the work gets done. They're promoting within, they're restructuring work. They're really, you have to have a mindset of we need and want this. And if someone wants the job enough, they will come to us. That kind of mindset doesn't work right now. where you're just like, hey, if somebody really wants a job, they'll come work for us. That mindset doesn't work. It may have worked 5 years ago. It may have worked 25 years ago, but this is not where we're at right now. So you have to be very adaptable. Number two is being more open to remote work. So we have some clients who say, hey, like the person has to work from the office. Like that's just everybody else is doing it there. You have to come in. We expect that. Well, back to my number one point about being adaptable, you have to be adaptable to that stuff as well. Being remote, allowing your employees to work remotely. So what would it look like if employees just continue to work full time after this pandemic has ended? What does it look like? Does your culture, like how does your culture interact, and how do employees interact with each other? How do managers, how does work get done? So think about that. I know I'm going to talk about what the percentage of companies that have people, CPA firms especially, having them work from home soon as well. But really, I find that if you have a really good in-depth, concrete communication plan with remote workers, that those firms are going to be the ones that are going to win this game of getting talent. And also also keep in mind that those who apply for future openings at your firm are already asking more and more about remote working options. In fact, this might be the first question they ask. The first question that the CPA firms seem to ask is someone vaccinated? Is the candidate vaccinated? But the first question that candidates are asking is, can I work from home? So add that to your job descriptions as well to save time, or if you're working with a recruiting firm, let them know, of course, is the position able to work from home? So again, the more adaptable you are, the better it is. What we're finding is that the split right now is about a third, a third, a third. A third of firms are having their employees there at the office all the time. A third have their employees working from home all the time. And a third are a hybrid, where it's 2 days in the office per week and 3 days at home. And then the next week is the opposite, or 1 day a week in the office and 4 days at home. So interesting times for sure. So it's about a third, a third, a third. Now, number three, as we go along my list of top 10 tips here, number three is improving employee mental health and wellness. So especially if you're in a recruiting space and you are trying to recruit people, you want to provide that kind of information. You want to let them know what the firm is doing from a mental health and wellness perspective. That's an important question that job seekers are asking. What's their, do they have any programs? If you do have programs, you want to share that during the interview or even on the job posting when you get it out there. So there's more and more tools and resources for staff on how to improve your well-being, their well-being, encourage employees to take mental health days, help members of your firm communicate more about their concerns. If you have any programs available, make sure to communicate that with your employees and remind them regularly. But obviously it's a serious health issue right now, especially with people working from home, isolation. You may think, oh, well, you were working at home in your last job, it should be okay. Some people have adapted well, some people have not. But the bottom line is it's okay to talk about it. And younger employees, especially younger job seekers, are especially mindful of that right now and have no problem discussing it as well. Number four, and this is best practices for recruiting staff and retaining staff too. It's not just for recruiting, but retaining staff too, is creating better employee engagement. So how have you maintained engagement among your staff, especially for those who live alone? Schedule casual Zoom meetings with your employees, encourage staff to reach out to one another as a starting point, assign mentors. Some of the firms, clients that we have mentors for each other to check in on one another to make sure things are okay. Not just, hey, have you done the work? Just how are you feeling? How are you doing? So talk about that also during the recruiting process. Talk about what programs are available. This is what people will want to know. What's your employee engagement? It's really hard, I get it, to create a culture when people are working from home. So how are you adopting that? How are you getting that out? Some firms are doing slowly lunches. They're looking at, we're in mid-November right now. They're looking at holiday lunches, holiday activities, getting people together slowly with COVID protocols and so on. That's what's happening right now at firms. Number 5 is updating your company perks. So this one has definitely changed because of COVID. Your employees' needs will change if they're working from home. And when I talk about company perks or organization perks, I don't necessarily mean health and dental benefits. I'm talking about the whole package. So you can review your organization, your firm's benefit package to ensure it has more health and wellness options, for example, for when your staff is feeling burnt out. You can also go above and beyond that to things that can boost productivity and morale. Some firms have given their employees a credit to purchase a new desk or chair, for example, $200 and $300 and so on, just to get that. Reimbursement of internet. It doesn't have to be a financial area, but it certainly goes a long way. Some firms are also doing some lunches, like some Zoom lunches, where they order from, especially for people working from home, they allow the employee to order from Uber Eats. And there's ways to set up an account in Uber Eats whereby everybody can put in their own orders and it goes to one credit card. And then you have a Zoom call to get everybody together. So some ideas like that. And that, again, goes a long way to creating that culture and the trust and engagement with those employees as well. And so adapt your benefit plan. There may be benefits that your firm is paying for that is not being used, and those funds can be redeployed to other perks. So if you have a group benefits plan, check it out, see if there's anything that can be eliminated, perhaps is not used, and redeploy those funds for something else. Now, number 6 is an interesting one. People don't really think about this, but it is really important. But it's one thing before the pandemic to have your line managers in with you, say you're a partner and you have a manager who's doing the interview. It's one thing to have them in the room with you. It's another thing when they don't know how to interview candidates by video. And it now becomes so important about the message that is sent by those line managers to those potential candidates about what it is. We are in little boxes. If we're not doing live interviews, we're in little boxes. And unfortunately, we have to rely on just that little screen, just that little square to give a good perspective on someone. And if you have a line manager who might not be that great in interviewing, or might not communicate as well, or may not be as enthusiastic about your firm, it's going to come across in the Zoom video. And what happens on Zoom is things are very muted in the sense of where someone may be excited, it doesn't come across the same way on Zoom as it would in a phone call or in person. So practice with your line managers before the interviews. Talk to them about what they're doing. I've seen a lot of poor interviews being done by line managers right now. And the usual tips that we tell job seekers: good lighting, don't kids screaming in the background, make sure the camera angle is good, make sure you're on time for interviews. All these tips that we tell job seekers, you should also be telling your line managers. And if I'm speaking to you, practice. Really important to send the right message. You want to be excited about your firm, the opportunity, and so on. So number 7, I touched on it, and the reason why I talked about the reason why I brought up the job numbers earlier on was for this very point, which is number 7. Look at across Canada and around the world for employees. The firms, companies or firms, for CPA firms that are winning this war on talent have a much more open mind about where the candidates, where their employees are coming from, whether it's location-wise, whether it's from a different country. They're definitely much more open to it. It started before COVID with outsourcing, say, to India and things like that, but it's become so much more prevalent now because of COVID, where what does it matter if I'm not down the street from you? Does it really matter? So remember, I mentioned earlier on some of the lowest unemployment cities across Canada, Quebec City at 3.8%, while Windsor is at 9.2%. So if you can find somebody in Windsor who has public accounting experience, still in Ontario, you should be okay. and you might not have to pay them as much because it's Windsor, the cost of living is lower, and you might have an opportunity to get somebody who's great, who's got the right experience. So keep that in mind. Definitely look at workers across Canada, around the world, and working remotely might be the new thing, might be a long time thing, may disappear, nobody knows. But the reality for now is it's here, and there's no clear direction on what the work environment will look like in the future. And nobody can really clearly say what it's going to look like. But people being close to an office is less of an issue. So look beyond geographic constraints to find staff, go to areas where higher unemployment is, as I mentioned, you will have more leverage. And also check out the government programs available as well, because sometimes you can get government programs for hiring people in different areas of Canada as well. Number 8 is don't get stuck on what worked for you in the past. I'm going to give you some examples here, but don't get stuck. Like, don't think, I know some of the maybe older school partners who have been in the trenches for years, they think, okay, well, this is, I had to go through this. I had to put up with this. I had to work overtime. Well, that doesn't work anymore. And that's been changing for many years. So don't get stuck on what worked for you in the past. Here's an example. A client was really excited about a candidate, and they offered them the job, but they gave them hours from 9 to 6. And the candidate was already only working 9 to 5. So what do you think? They didn't accept the position. So don't forget, it kind of goes back to number 1, be adaptable, but don't forget to adjust for your existing employees also. Make adjustments, because a lot of times your existing staff is possibly looking at other options in other firms because they're giving them more flexibility and they're adapting their hours to them, or they're allowing them to work at home more time. So people are still looking for work-life balance. It is different than what it was before the pandemic, but they're still looking for that work-life balance. And now it's working from home, not as many hours perhaps, flex time, and so on. Number 9, 2 left. Number 9 is job seekers are much more in tune with health and safety right now than ever. So what's your organization doing for health and safety? There are many job seekers who want to know what safeguards you have in place, sanitizing stations, is there plexiglass between employees? Is there enough social distancing? Do you provide sick days? It's a hot issue right now, of course, as well. So what is your policy? Make sure that your current employees know that, but also ones that you're bringing on board, how important you feel about health and safety. It may not mean as much to you, but it means a lot to people coming on. So make sure to communicate that with them as well. And number 10, this will maybe my favorite one, is make everything more visual. I know with CPA firms, a lot of times you get kind of in that zone of do a job description, just post it up, and there's an expression in the recruiting industry, post and pray. And you want to make things a little bit more visual. That's what the world is right now. So, using videos, linking to your social media, using LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever social media, depends on the roles that you're looking to fill. You might not put a partner role on Snapchat, but you want to at least keep that in mind about getting it out there. So have a social media strategy also. And if you have a marketing person in your firm, see how you can use their social media, the firm's social media, to advertise your open positions. So a lot of great ideas there, but just make everything more visual. That's what we're in right now, less about text and more about visual. So in conclusion, we got about 5 minutes left. If you have any questions, feel free to post them in the Q&A. I want to thank you for your time. If you want to discuss your staffing needs for your firm, let me know. I'm happy to have that conversation. Our recruiting team can help you really anywhere in Canada. If you have clients that are looking for staff as well, controller, accounting manager, or other areas, HR, sales, admin, you're welcome to connect with me. I'm going to put it in the chat, my contact information as well, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like, or send me a message. My email is there. You can also connect with us on our social media as well. I'm just going to throw that in, and then we'll take some questions here. Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and depending on what your social media preferences are, you can certainly connect. And also we have a great number of videos on our Toronto Jobs YouTube channel that you can get a good cross-section of topics on interviewing tips, how to find staff, other areas as well. There's literally hundreds of videos on there that you can find. And then we've got a couple of great virtual events that you might be interested in coming up tomorrow, Wednesday, November 17th. We have the virtual Canadian Executive Leadership Conference that happens tomorrow afternoon, Eastern Time. That's presented by TorontoJobs.ca. And then the Canadian Virtual Sell Your Business Conference happens on Wednesday, December 15th. So if you're in a firm and you want to connect with people or perhaps looking to sell their firms, that would be great. And we've got a few minutes left. If you'd like to ask any other questions, you're welcome to throw it in the Q&A or in the Q&A or in the chat, and we can cover off some questions that might be coming in here. And if Sandra is back in, she can do a little bit of moderating. Welcome back, Sandra.
Hey, Mark, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. All good.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so let's just go through some of the questions here. So the first question that we have is, what are CPA firms doing wrong?
Well, there's a lot of things they might be doing wrong right now. I'd say, and I've said this in the presentation a little bit, but just, thinking old school and not adapting and forcing people to be in an office when, do they really, really need to be in an office? So really thinking, kind of outside the box and thinking what could be different. Another area that I would say is firms have done a really quick shift to going paperless, but there are a number of firms that are still using paper files and they're not as tech friendly, I guess, perhaps. So really moving to that and adapting to the technology that was available. And maybe the last thing I would say is, just thinking about, well, this is what the last person was earning. This is what they were making, so this new person should be earning the same. Well, there's a lot of factors going on right now, not only the labor shortage, but also inflation and so on. So don't always think of, hey, this is what the last person was. Think of what maybe it makes sense for you in this current market.
Okay, let me check here. Another question is, how do I find out compensation to pay staff?
Okay, good. So I would say, we have a good handle on what people are earning right now, even though it's kind of been topsy-turvy in terms of what the market is these days. But I would suggest talking to recruiters, whether it's myself or someone else, but ones that specialize in your area. If you go to a generalist, they might not have a good handle on specifically what the salaries are and compensation is for different positions. So talking to recruiters, constantly interview as many people as possible. Again, it's not, sometimes our clients think that, we're making up what someone is earning, but firms that are overpaying have high retention. I had one firm who came up and said, hey, Mark, we're paying this person this much. Does this make sense in this market? And they were actually overpaying. So they were paying for overtime and so on, but the retention was sky high. But think about ultimately what it would take to find a replacement, cost, training, how much time is involved to find somebody. Average, it takes 36 days to find a new employee. So keep that in mind, and keep in mind that that's the average. Probably for a CPA firm, it's probably much higher than that as well in this market. Okay,
so we have a minute left until the webinar ends. Do you have anything else that you'd like to add in addition to just anything else that you had mentioned today?
Yeah, I think, if somebody is really, just wants to tap into my mind, so to speak, and talk about what is happening or what your specific situation is, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to chat. I did put my email address in here as well. And my cell phone number is in there as well. My work number is in there as well. So feel free to call me anytime. If there's something I can help with, I'm happy to have a chat. It's one of my favorite topics, recruiting. I've been doing it for 26 years now. So I kind of devoted almost half my life to recruitment. So happy to have that chat. Feel free to reach out if there's anything I can help with.
Yeah, so I'm just going to share again just your contact information there, Mark, that you had put in there earlier. If anyone else has any other questions, Mark certainly will answer them to the best of his abilities. And I think that's pretty much it.
Great job, Sandra. Thanks so much for organizing.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thanks
attending.
everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Have a great day.